So over the last week, I've spent most of my time at one of the HS2 protest camps in the Colne Valley, which is just near Uxbridge. Whilst I was there, I was documenting a lot of the actions and general life that was going on around the camp, including a lot of the unlawful behaviour on the part of the National Eviction Team and HS2 security that have been brought out in order to deal with the protesters there. During that time, I got a lot of questions from people about what we were doing, about HS2, a lot of things, and so I wanted to speak to some of those questions in order to clear them up. So, first things first, what is HS2? HS2 stands for High Speed Rail 2, and it's a rail line that's going to run between Manchester in the north of England and London in the southeast, and also stopping at other large cities such as Birmingham. So HS2 has been in the works for about 10 years, which might come as a surprise to some people. It certainly did for me. And that's because it hasn't really been talked about much, and up until recently it hasn't been in the public eye at all. There are people that have been engaging with this and running campaigns in order to stop it for 10 years. I highly recommend going and checking out the Stop HS2 campaign's website in order to find out more about that. So why is HS2 so bad, and why are we protesting it? There's a lot of reasons, so I'm going to break this one down. Firstly, the cost. Now, this project was initially projected to cost around £50 billion. That has now gone up to around £110 billion. And this is of taxpayer money. That's roughly £7,000 per eligible taxpayer in this country. That money is desperately needed for our NHS, for our schools, for our public services. And there's so many other important areas where it could be put to use. In this country, we're really lucky to have an extensive network of public transport and of rail services, but a lot of these need upgrading and renationalising in order to make them more accessible to the general public. The money that's being spent on building this one rail line could go to doing that for so many other public transport services. So the second point is, HS2 have said themselves that this rail line will never be carbon neutral. It's a high-speed rail, so it will need more fuels in order to run. And considering our parliament declared a climate and ecological emergency just last year, this seems really ridiculous. The third point is that the whole function of this rail line is in order to increase the speed of commuters' journeys between cities like Birmingham and London. We've now been told that it's only going to cut about 20 to 40 minutes off these journeys, which isn't a significant amount of time at all. So the next point is around the environmental and ecological destruction that is going to be done in order to build this line. Firstly, it's going to be destroying around 100 ancient woodlands and natural areas in this country. Those are ecosystems and environments that humans and so many other species rely on. And again, it's just ridiculous that this is happening in the UK, where we have declared a climate and ecological emergency. As I saw last week in the Colne Valley, a lot of this destruction isn't even in order to build the actual railway itself. It's in order for them to build extra roads so that they can more easily transport machinery, which will then go towards building the railway. But the actual building of the line won't happen for years because they're having to destroy all of these woodlands just in order to build the roads to get to the locations first. Another really significant aspect of the ecological destruction that they're causing that is going to have a real impact on human lives is an aquifer that sources water for 2 million people in London, which is going to be polluted by this construction. So the final point is that this destruction isn't only going to affect ecosystems and natural areas, it's also going to affect communities. In the Colne Valley, there is Dews Lane, which is just next to where one of the encampments is based. And on this lane there lives a few families that have grown up and raised their children on that lane in that valley. One individual who has literally built his house there, built his own business there, and he's spent the last 10 years being threatened by HS2 with eviction. They're not being offered compensation, they're not being offered any support in this. They're just getting constant threats and constant harassment to move. And it's just devastating to see the impact that this is having on real people that are just trying to go about their lives. So the next question that I've been getting is about the sites and the protests. So firstly, who has been coordinating and running them? As I said earlier, for the past 10 years, a campaign called Stop HS2 has been running, and there's been a whole load of individuals and groups that have been hugely dedicated in running that campaign and in bringing it to the public attention. More recently, other environmental activists and groups such as XR have got involved and set up camps in locations such as the Colne Valley and Crackley Woods up near Coventry in order to physically disrupt the destruction that is being done by construction workers. There's been people that have been living in these camps for months and years and dedicating their whole lives to protecting the communities and the ecosystems in those areas. So I spent the last few days at the camp in Colne Valley, and it was a really incredible environment. At times you almost forgot about the reason you were there because you were just in a beautiful forest by an amazing lake. And it was really easy just to kind of get lost in that environment, and then you'd have a bailiff come and ruin that, or you'd have the noise of a digger in a background and you'd remember why it was that you were there. At the moment, obviously, there's a lot of difficulty in going to these camps because of the COVID-19 pandemic and because of lockdown. The majority of the people that are there have been there for months, and so they are allowing people to come to the camp at their own risk, knowing that they may then catch the virus. However, everyone that has been going has been really cautious around the people that and the places that they come into contact with when they then leave the woods. Because it is a lot easier to keep that distance and it's a lot easier to keep that confinement when you're in those spaces, but obviously coming to the outside world is different. Every individual involved acknowledges the risk and is taking every precaution that they can, but knowing that this work is essential and that there is a much greater crisis at play here that we must still be engaging with. So, lastly, what can we do about this? Again, there's a lot of points to this, so I'm going to break it down. Firstly, there's the obvious. Go along to the camps, support the people that are living there, support the protests, physically take part. Obviously, there's a lot of restrictions to this. So we are currently still in a lockdown, which makes it impossible for a lot of people, and we still need to be protecting those who are most vulnerable. So I would only recommend going down if you are not a vulnerable person yourself and if you won't be coming into contact with any vulnerable people. Another slight problem with that is that although the camps are on either private land or they have permission to be there, a lot of the protests involve illegal activity because we're disrupting work. And although we believe that it is in order to prevent even greater injustices from being committed, it doesn't mean that there isn't the possibility of arrest or the possibility of breaking the law. So I encourage anyone that is planning to come to these sites to ensure that they want to put themselves in that position, know that that is completely their choice and no one is demanding that of them, and to take every precaution in their well-being, with their emotional and physical capacities, that they have received the right trainings and education, especially when it comes to their legal rights, so that they are fully prepared to go into those environments. But apart from that, I really recommend coming along. So if you are staying at home, if you are still socially distancing, there's still a lot of things that you can do to help from there. So firstly, the most important thing is spreading the word. Now, as we all know, the majority of social media and the news has been taken up by coronavirus over the last few months, and it's still the most important thing on everyone's minds, which is understandable. But we still need to be engaging with other issues such as climate and environmental destruction that is happening and doing everything that we can in order to prevent those things. Spread information about the train line, spread information about how people can get involved. Just keep on shouting and making that message clear so that we can get it to as many people as possible. There's also a few more practical things that you can be doing. You can contact HS2 directly and put in a formal complaint about any of the things that I mentioned earlier in this video. Obviously, it won't necessarily make that much impact, but at least we're making it very clear that they do not have public support for this. Lastly, contact your MPs. Send them an email, write to them directly, contact them through social media, keep demanding that those in power take action on this and stop this project before it's too late. So lastly, I just wanted to say how important it is that we are all engaging in these issues to the greatest extent possible, depending on our individual circumstances. It's really crazy being in those environments, being on the front lines of that destruction and seeing the treatment of people that try to resist it, and knowing that we are still so privileged and still so protected doing that, even in those environments. It really, really makes you aware of the gravity of this situation and the extent to which there are so many people in the world that have no choice when it comes to engaging in this resistance and to fighting these fights, because their very lives and homes are being threatened with extinction. Whatever your stance is of this specific issue around HS2, please just continue engaging because you have the privilege to. We have to keep using that privilege because there are so many people that don't have as much choice. And so we need to be doing whatever we can to stand in solidarity with those people, to support those people, to raise these issues to the level of importance and urgency that they need to be.